Let's check out today's conversation. Mike sits down with the president of FC Dallas, Dan Hunt. Dan shares the story of his family's legacy in transforming American sports from their humble rural beginnings.
My grandfather, H.L. Hunt, he was a farmer in Arkansas, and he went broke.
To the risks his father took for his passion.
He founded a football league at the age of 26.
That's amazing.
To creating an unstoppable force with immeasurable impact.
And the accomplishments were just unfathomable for a young man.
Yeah.
Names the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
By the way, that's
the name of the Super Bowl.
Well,
All of this coming up next on the Level Up Lifestyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Level Up Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sheets. And as always, we are coming to you live from Globe Life Studios here in McKinney, Texas. So excited to have a very special guest with us here today, Mr. Dan Hunt. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me today.
Of course, thanks for being here on the show. So Dan, we've got a great story to unpack with your family, the Hunt family. The president of FC Dallas, co-owner FC Dallas, co-owner Kansas City Chiefs, and some other organizations that we'll get into as well. So just so excited to have you here. Before we kind of get into that story, what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about Globe and FC Dallas's partnership with the Special Olympics, because I think this is something that is so unique in the sport of soccer here in this country and with MLS that maybe a lot of people don't know what it is. So can you just talk a little bit about that Special Olympic?
Yeah, and it's something I'm so incredibly proud of. Our FC Dallas Foundation has a Special Olympics team, and it's also associated with partners from FC Dallas. So we have young players in our system, both boys and girls, who participate with Special Olympic athletes, but Globe Life is the presenting sponsor of this.
Yeah.
And it is just so cool to be a part of. The smiles, the energy around it, watching these athletes from SO play, and the joy and happiness it brings. And I it's literally probably my favorite thing at FC Dallas that's not related to the team and the game day experience. And we treat these athletes like professional athletes. They come in, we have a signing day. I sign all the athletes to a contract. They get first team gear. They're treated like first team players. And for me, I'm so proud of our young people at the club, their involvement, the foundation, but our head coaches even run training sessions a couple times a year for the athletes. And it permeates through our entire organization. And it truly is the best feel good I think that we have, and I'm so thankful for Globe Life and the resources, the effort. Being present is a big part of it, and I always see the support from the staff here, there at games and stuff, and at practices, supporting the SO athletes. And we were the very first MLS team to have that Special Olympics team, and we compete against other MLS teams. That's what's
great.
Really cool.
Yeah.
This year was a little bit more of a pod system, but we do take the athletes on road trips, and they get to go, cool places for the first time. Boston to play against New England is one that's come up, and so it's just something special and unique. And I tell this story. We had an athlete, and his name is James, and he's been on the team a number of years. And James is really nonverbal, and I think was in a shell. I mean, if you talk to his parents, was in a shell, and then he got to be part of this program. And while communication can be difficult, he can communicate with you. He has totally come out that he has the most vibrant smile.
Wow.
And every time I see him, it just warms my heart.
Yeah.
Makes us all feel great. He's so loved around the entire organization. Our fans love him. I can't tell you how many times I stop and see our fans stopping the Special Olympic athletes, giving them hugs, giving them high fives. And it's really the best part of sports.
Yeah, it's awesome. So these individuals on the Special Olympics team, they get to play at the stadium, right? They're kind of part of that experience, and they have the jersey, the full uniform, signing everything?
Yeah, they play post-match.
Okay.
Usually, so it's a second match on game day, and they play. The field is shortened a little bit, and it's really fun to watch them play. And I tell you, we've had some great memories, some great goals. We actually had one make Sports Center one year.
I remember that.
Yes,
I remember
exactly.
that. Yeah,
I think it was number 2 on Sports Center.
Yeah,
and a young man hit a bomb.
Yeah.
It was so great. And something I'm proud of too, not just our whole staff is there, but the first team professional players come out and cheer on that.
Oh, that's great.
And it's really cool, but it wouldn't be possible without Globe Life's involvement. And it's just something truly special. And it makes our club unique. And now the great news is it's permeated through all of Major League Soccer. And each year now, one Special Olympic player and one partner from each club gets to go to All-Star.
Oh, wow.
And they play a game there.
Oh, that's great.
And it's so fun. And to always see those athletes is such a treat at All-Star.
Yeah. And it's something that we're so happy to be a part of. But it really, if you think about it, these individuals, this is an opportunity that they would not have had if this hadn't come forward. And then to be able to experience a part of life that a lot of times is, it's almost reserved to that upper echelon athlete or, someone in a different scenario, and they get to experience it, and to see them come out of that shell, it's got to be really rewarding.
No, it is so rewarding, and you're right. But there are a lot of great organizations, My Possibilities, that we're involved with, and actually help them put in a field there. The FC Dallas Foundation, I believe, is on Field 12.
Okay.
And so that's been something that I think has been fabulous, and Globe Life has been involved in a lot of different parts and pieces of this. But everything from resurfacing an old tennis court to make it playable kind of in a sport court, all the way to basically building a full-size pitch. And we partner with great organizations throughout the Metroplex. And really it's, empowering, young people in underserved areas and giving them a safe space to play the game. And I know that's a little bit outside the Special Olympics realm, but you see the difference that makes in different communities. Soccer is the global sport.
Absolutely.
Right? It's number one. And the reason being is all you need is a ball. To play. But in a lot of neighborhoods, kids don't have safe spaces or have opportunities. Again, what I'm so proud of is we're providing opportunities for these Special Olympics athletes and for our partners. I've seen my niece and nephew, the oldest two, have been partners at FC Dallas in the Special Olympics program, and the growth as a human being. And they're wonderful, but I've seen so many of our kids that I've known for so long at the club be part of this, and every one of them says it literally changed my life. And Globe Life again is really making this happen for this organization and for these young people. And like I said, it is my favorite thing that I get to do. That it just it's the best part of sports because you see people playing it because they truly love it.
Right. It's the love of the game and it's the personal development. We all like sports. We all like to consume sports, and professional sports, of course, is a very prevalent element of society in general. But I think this is the core of how making tomorrow better, helping people's lives improve, and making that difference. So we just appreciate what you guys do for this as well, because it's a great program.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that. But it is our great pleasure to get to do that and, make an impact in all communities here in North Texas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dan, let's get into this a little bit, because your family story is so intriguing. There's lots of ups and downs and overcoming adversity and vision casting and just making things happen. And I think there's so many parallels that our viewers and listeners here, regardless of where they are in their own personal journey, they may not be on the road to own an NFL franchise or a Major League Soccer team, but they're certainly in the ownership of their own life. And there's so many things that we can pull aside from that. So I'm so excited to get into this and so happy you're here to share this. So if you want to kind of just start, your how the family gets started. And we talked earlier kind of about the Great Depression, or even before that, just, as a farmer and rancher family kind of moving into the oil business.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable story, right? But it could really only happen in America. And you talk about, people not maybe owning an NFL team or a Major League Soccer team, but this is truly the only country that you have that opportunity that you can amass personal wealth.
Yeah.
Odds are so far against you in other countries.
Absolutely.
We are very blessed and fortunate to live here. The story's a crazy one. That's really where you start. My grandfather, H.L. Hunt, he was a farmer in Arkansas, and he went broke in 1917, 1918, and 1919.
Yeah.
1 year was the flood, 1 year was the locust, 1 year was the drought. I never get the order right of which, but
somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But listening to my dad sort of recount the story of he had nothing. and he went and borrowed $50 from the local pharmacist in town. This sort of sounds like the Coca-Cola story.
Right. And $50 then it's pretty
It was
pretty
a real
sizable.
number. Yeah, it was a real number. They had discovered oil in Lake County, Arkansas, and my grandfather went and he would buy interest in oil wells and carve out an override and keep a piece, and he'd go pay $5 for something and sell it for 10. And he just had that sort of natural trading ability, but he was a salesman.
Yeah.
Right. And I've spent plenty of time in my own businesses trying to buy minerals and royalties and leases. I have a side oil and gas business, and it's how you talk to people and how you sell. There are a whole lot of no's.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he experienced a lot. Now he had a little bit of gamesmanship in him too, though, because I think he was a professional gambler on top of that, which is the oil business.
It's a kind of a gamble to begin with. In some cases,
but he won a lot of leases and a lot of minerals in card games, and he was an exceptionally good card player. So he was famous for that. But he amassed a small. I use the term a small fortune. I don't even know how big it was, but in East Texas about this time, they had started, drilling a lot of wells, and there was a belief by my grandfather that the Woodbine sands out in East Texas, amongst other formations, would be productive. And there was a gentleman out there, and he owned a lot of land, had a lot of leases, and he was drilling oil wells. Except the problem with him, he was drilling dry holes, and he would sell 130% of a well. And you can understand that was 30% might be going in his pocket.
Right.
And so my grandfather took.
And there's not a return in some cases.
There were a lot of dry holes apparently. But my grandfather went and he believed that this was going to be a great fortune. So he went and bought all of this gentleman's assets and liabilities, settled his liabilities. And
so he took over a business that wasn't doing well, essentially on the theory that it could.
Yeah, it wasn't that it wasn't doing well. I mean, I think it was just a sham. Yeah. Really a sham business. But there had been wells that had been drilled out in East Texas that were productive, very nice wells. And over time, there were some gushers. And at one point, the East Texas oil field was the largest onshore U.S. oil field, and one of the largest in the entire world. Now obviously Saudi Arabia, places Libya, places like that have gigantic fields, and now you see what's going on out in Midland and the Midland Basin, Permian Basin, unbelievable. But he went out and took this sham business and drilled wells, and the rest is history. But he was a big risk taker, but at his core, he was a good salesman. Yeah. And he was able to talk to people in different ways and achieve what he wanted to get was huge blocks of land. And then, Great Depression was a tough time in this country. And I look back to this, I didn't learn this till, later in my life, that he tried not to fire a single person during the Great Depression. Wow. And which I thought was an interesting, those were really tough times. And his strategy, though, was because if you were an oil hand, you might work 6 or 7 days a week. But what he did was divided his crews, and he would have them work 4 days a week, and then the other crew would work 3 days. And then he would flip-flop the crews. And so if you work 3, then you work 4 the next week. And, I heard my dad say this one time to me. He said, look, people need jobs, right? There's a couple of things. One, the economic part of it, which is, putting food on the table, but there's a feeling of self-worth. And my grandfather, I was a big believer in that. And I think that's why he amassed the fortune he did.
Yeah. And doing things right by people, right? And it creates culture that is almost magnetic in a way, I would think.
We're a family business. I mean, you talked about it earlier. My brother and I co-own FC Dallas, and then we co-own the Chiefs and most of all of our other businesses with our other 2 siblings. We have an older brother and sister, and we're a family business. And the people that you work with, you spend more time with them than you spend probably at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the reality of it. Yeah. And you need to treat them with the respect they deserve, and also they're part of your family. Yeah. And if they feel like they're part of your family, you will be successful more times than not.
Yeah. And it's almost, as you tell that story with your grandfather, it's kind of 2 elements stick out to me as, number one, not being afraid to be the risk taker and taking on something that, maybe like you said, it's a sham, but there's a benefit to it, but it's a risk. And then secondly, when the Great Depression strikes, I mean, obviously these are events that are outside of his control, but it's how you take care of people in those moments that help catalyst the growth and the opportunity to, really everything in your family today, and how impactful the things that your family does in society is from kind of, in a way, those two decisions.
Sure. And my dad said it best. He said, you've always got to be present too. And that's present work-wise, present emotionally. He didn't say that part, but that's what he really meant.
Yeah.
He said, by being present, you show that you care, and nobody should care more than you. And my grandfather was a workaholic. HL was. His kids were all workaholics. I mean, my dad, the last day before he went in the hospital, for until he passed away, he was working at his desk, and I took him to the hospital. And my Uncle Herbert, who was the last of that generation, who just recently passed away, Herbert Hunt, he was showing up to work every day at 95 still, every single day. And I ran into my Aunt Caroline a number of years ago. She passed away a couple of years ago, but she had macular degeneration, but she still went to the office every single day. I bumped into her the last time I saw her in their family office. I think she was 90 or 91, something like that. And it was that instilled work ethic. That's what it takes to be great.
Absolutely.
You can say anything that you want and say, oh, well, that was dumb luck that it happened. But it is, 9 times out of 10, but it's probably greater than that. You have to put the work in to have the success.
There's no shortcut. There's no shortcuts at all. I think it's in part work ethic, but how much does having a strong purpose that you feel empowered towards every day also help facilitate that work ethic?
Yeah, you have to love what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, truly love what you do, because again, you will spend more time doing that than with your family. And that's just the reality of, I think, our work society. But again, you're putting food on the table, providing opportunities, hopefully leading to better opportunities for your family and loved ones in the future.
Yeah.
But you have to have that purpose. You have to have that drive every day. People always ask me this question, and it's funny. They said, okay, do you like the Chiefs better or FC Dallas better? Are you like football or soccer better? And there's a funny side answer to that, but I always tell people about the game of soccer. I said, it is the most beautiful game in the entire world.
That's what they call it, the beautiful game.
That is. You're exactly right. The genius that happens on the field is amazing. It's artistic. It's beautiful. It's intriguing. Football is the ultimate team sport. If you take a half a step the wrong way, that play will not work. But I do tell everybody, as the president of FC Dallas, I have the greatest job in the entire world.
Yeah.
And I get to be part of what my dad built, his effort that went into soccer. I get to see his genius every day. That was the last project we got to do together while he was alive, was build Toyota Stadium. And so that's why I think I have the greatest job in the world. Now, when it comes to favorite team, my favorite 2 teams right now are the Rockin' Rainbows and Flower Power, which are my daughter's soccer teams.
Here you go. I can relate to that. Absolutely. Okay, so as we get into the progression here, your dad starts getting involved. Is he involved in the family oil business, and then sports start to come out, or how did that happen? Because he's done some very amazing things and laid foundation generationally.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I'll take you all the way back when my dad was about 5 or 6. He started creating games for his entire family to play.
Okay.
And inclusive of his brothers and sisters, and sometimes there would be cousins around. So my father's nickname growing up was Games.
Okay.
And he loved playing sports, and he actually went to the Hill School in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, a boarding school, where his older brothers had gone. So Herbert and Bunker had gone there. And, he was a good football player, and I think a pretty good baseball player. And he went to SMU to play football there. He said he rode the bench incredibly well at SMU. He had a couple of Pro Football Hall of Famers in front of him. And then he played freshman baseball there. But after college, and he was a geology major. Thought he was going in the family business.
Yeah, right.
And he followed his brothers around the world looking for oil. And obviously we had a ton of domestic production at the time. East Texas, the family had moved into the Midland area in the 30s. And he loved the oil business, but after a couple years of doing that, I mean, he was all about sports.
Yeah.
That's what brought him so much joy. And, his father was not at all. HL was I don't want to say he was anti-sports, but he was not into it. Although I'm reading a cool book called The King of Diamonds right now, and it's about a diamond thief in Dallas between 1960 and 1970. Incredible book about the history of Dallas. And it does seem that my grandfather might have been going to a few betting houses in the book.
You're seeing some correlation.
I'm seeing some correlation.
I heard that story, right?
But after Super Bowl IV, which the Kansas City Chiefs win, beat Minnesota Vikings, I saw a telegraph from my grandfather. Congratulations on winning your big game or something like that. But it was a little bit distant in that, again, I just don't think he was that into sports. He was oil and real estate by extension and those things. But my father's passion for sports and his love from it, I mean, it was from his, earliest days. And this love of organizing games and so creative. And, he took the big plunge though around the age of 26. I mean, he founded a football league at the age of 26.
That's amazing. It's mind blowing.
I don't want to tell you what I was doing when I was 26. Okay. I don't, let's not talk about that.
Right.
But the idea, and it's a very famous story, but he flew out to Florida to visit the then owner of the Chicago Cardinals. And he visited with the gentleman and, said, hey, I'd like to buy the team because he heard it had been for sale. My dad tried to talk the NFL into selling him a franchise in Dallas. And the NFL, which was about 13 teams at that time, the response was Dallas is going to be a terrible market for the NFL. It will be a massive failure. It will never succeed in Dallas. I think they got that wrong. I think there were a lot of people who would disagree with that.
But it was probably a smaller population at the time and different dynamics and things I would imagine.
Dallas was a very different place. Right. Dallas is unto itself very unique because it's so successful, but yet it's not on a coast. It's not in the it's not a resort town. There's a lot of reasons why Dallas should not exist.
It's flat and hot, and there's not a lot of trees. And you kind of wonder, why is Dallas here? Right?
No, you're exactly right. But again, Dallas is this epicenter. I think why we're so fortunate to be here business wise is because the economy is so diverse and it attracted so many people. Obviously, the oil and gas business helped in that space. But back to my dad, he gets shot down by the NFL. Dallas is a terrible market for football, and NFL will fail, and you don't know what you're talking about. He tries to buy this franchise, and the one takeaway besides getting a hard and fast no, and my dad got a lot of no's, and my father's story of perseverance and his work ethic, and he never accepted that. He gets to know, and the guy though gave him the most important detail, which was, hey, there have been a number of people who've come to see me about buying this franchise, but I've told them no. And so my dad on his way back wrote the foundation documents to the American Football League on airline stationery.
Wow.
And which we still have those documents. We kind of take that as the Magna Carta of football in this country, which is really a cool thing. And what he decided to do was go to each of these gentlemen and see if they wanted to start their own football league. So he phoned them up, and he got a number of them to agree. Originally, it was 8, and then the NFL decided to try to pick off all 7 of the other owners. All right, so they offered them
except for your dad,
except for my dad, which they picked the fight with the wrong guy.
Right.
And so it was unfortunate that they did that. They offered each one of them an NFL franchise, and they all said no except Minnesota. Actually, and then as a result, if I'm historically right, getting my facts, there's just a few sports facts. Oakland came in. As a result of Minnesota leaving. And my father founded the American Football League, and he started working on it at about the age of 26, and at 27 it was ready to go, and played their first season in 1960.
So a lot of people, if they don't know all the deep history in the NFL, these are your AFC teams that you think of now, the Raiders and and the Chiefs, which were the Texans in the beginning, right? The Dallas Texans.
Houston Oilers, Denver Broncos,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Right.
you got it just goes Buffalo Bills,
Yeah.
goes.
Which makes sense why the Vikings are an NFC team, right? You think about it, because they went to the NFL. Right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
But also, again, that was my dad's ability to sell an idea and be a man of his word, and right, and that's a big part of life.
Yeah.
You do what you say you're going to do.
Sure.
And sometimes it's really painful. But if you live up to your word, the rewards will far outweigh that.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's short-term pain or long-term pain, but you don't, if it's all gone, I mean, the money can be gone fast, everything, but at least your integrity stays intact. And you can look at yourself in the mirror each and every day saying, I'm being the best person that I can be. And my dad had to do a lot of selling and convincing, but he always did what he said he was going to do. I mean, that's just a life lesson from my father.
Yeah, yeah. And it also, you think about it, just being told no and not letting that stop you. You know, how many times people have a vision or idea that they want for their life or for their business, and they run up into some obstacles and just kind of think, well, man, it's going to be too challenging to get through. And, your dad's decision of, okay, well, if you won't let me in the NFL, I'll just create my own league. And, how to see the opportunity in the no, in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of business.
Yeah.
You will get more no's than yeses. And that's just the reality of it. And no is not always a no. It's an opportunity, right? Now, sometimes you take your licks and you move on and say, I don't want that to happen. And I mean, I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about this. My dad had a lot of business failures, right? You look at a guy who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, class of 72, National Soccer Hall of Fame, class of 82, and International Tennis Hall of Fame, 1993, and you say, wow, it must have been all amazing. No, there were a whole lot of failures on the way, but there were some life lessons that he took from each of those failures that now I believe the NFL is what it is today. Major League Soccer is what it is today. And while our involvement in the Chicago Bulls was just a board seat, his perseverance, he was greatly rewarded with 6 championships and the greatest player of all time.
Yeah.
If you listen to the tennis greats, McEnroe, Everett, a lot of them thank my dad for creating job opportunities for them. And the modern ATP really owes its roots, back to old WCT, which my dad did with his nephew, Al Hill Jr.
Yeah.
They were involved in it together. And so, I mean, the legacy is unbelievable.
Yeah, and we'll kind of jump around a little bit, but I mean, what you just said, he basically modernized professional tennis in a way and structured it and had set the table for that whole thing, and not everybody realizes that, which is a pretty neat aspect of his life.
Well, I mean, tennis. Let's start. I mean, when you think about some of our other sports, and I pick soccer. My dad didn't grow up playing soccer. Okay, I mean, frankly, he knew very little about it. And tennis, he maybe played with some friends. I think he grew up on White Rock Lake here in Dallas. I think there was a tennis court there, and so I think he played a little bit. But to professionalize tennis, I mean, just unheard of, right? Now, there was a little bit of an underbelly in tennis where these athletes were sort of taken care of, if you will. Yeah. But he actually created an opportunity for people to earn a paycheck. I can't tell you how many people stop us around the country when we're at games and they're former players, coaches, press staff, and they say, I just want to thank your dad and your family because I got to live my dream for a job opportunity because your father fought so hard to create these leagues and these opportunities, and there were so many ancillary jobs created out of that.
Sure. Yeah, it's making a big impact. On top of this, so he founds the AFL, right, in the Dallas Texans. There's the decision to move because NFL puts the Dallas Cowboys in, right? So that's how the team moves to Kansas City, becomes the Chiefs. And then the NFL is doing so well, it's now the NFL-AFL merger, and your dad kind of was a big part of that as well.
Yeah, so we're here, and the Cowboys were brought in. Clint Murkison, comes in, and both teams were failing. They were struggling for attendance, and Kansas City with the mayor Roe Bartle was willing to do a season ticket campaign. And, so he did that to help lure the Chiefs to Kansas City. And we go there, and our first season's in 1963. And, again, my dad and the volume of work and the accomplishments were just unfathomable for a young man.
Yeah.
Because in 65, he presides over the AFL-NFL merger, names the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
By the way, that's
the name of the Super Bowl.
Well, that's the one I'm mad at my dad about, right? Because I'm like, man, you should have trademarked that. We would all be laying on a beach now.
Yeah, right.
No, and
wasn't it about a ball? Like there was like a bouncy ball or
there was
something?
exactly. My mother Norma had bought a Super Bowl at an AFL championship game, and my oldest brother and sister and Clark was really little were playing with it. I mean, Clark was basically, and probably shouldn't have been putting the ball in his mouth, right? That was a choking hazard. And my dad was sitting at a meeting at some point in 65, and they were talking about the AFL and NFL championship game that was going to be played. In fact, the first one wasn't called the Super Bowl historically. And so they were going back and forth. And my father, said, the big game we're talking about. They're like, well, yeah, what are we going to call this?
Yeah.
He said, the Super Bowl. And he just blurted it out. And it stuck. But then Commissioner Pete Rozelle didn't like the name. My father also took the Roman numerals from the Olympics, and he didn't like that either. He thought that was unsophisticated, and so
it's kind of the thing now, right? When you think about it,
it
right?
is the thing.
Yeah.
And Pete was a great commissioner. In fact, I saw a letter back to my dad from Pete in the early '80s. Saying you were so right about naming the Super Bowl and the Roman numerals. It's just a really amazing letter.
That's pretty cool
to see stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he said, thank you for your constant support and everything. It was a really great letter. But my father, names the Super Bowl, presides over the merger, names the Super Bowl, and by the way, decides that he's going to start, professional soccer in 1966. So first season 1967, founds World Championship tennis in 66, starts playing around 67, and then invests in the Chicago Bulls, all in this time period of like 14 months.
That's
so
incredible.
If you think about it, in 65, 66, he's 33, 34, 35, right in there. But it really all took place in about a 14 or so month period, 15 months. I mean, what an accomplishment.
Yeah.
But it also, I speak about this a lot. Time and timing are everything. I gave a speech recently in Asia, and it was about what is the most valuable currency in the entire world. It's not gold. It's not Bitcoin. It's time.
Yeah.
Because when it's gone, and you can never get it back. But a component of that is timing. My father was in the right place at the right time, had the right resources, and the nation was hungry for these things. And it worked out. At a different time, it would not have worked out. And that's, again, a life lesson in business.
Sure.
A no now doesn't mean a no in 18 months or 2 years. But also at the same time, if you don't have a sense of urgency to get that yes, you may never get it again. That window closes on you.
The timing's gone, and the opportunity moved on. How much of it do you think is also just being aware at that moment, just having the awareness of, here's something that would work. Here's a need in the culture that people are looking for, and it's not always easy to see that, right? But to realize, hey, this is something. I think the timing's there. You got to be aware.
Yeah, you have to be aware of your surroundings, what's happening. Obviously, you had the great NFL championship game that was, the Colts game. That was really probably his triggering moment for football. That really he thought it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Soccer, he saw his first match in Ireland. Our mother, Norma, was a Rotary scholar. And so she was at the University College Dublin in Ireland. So he saw a Shamrock Rovers game against UCD, first soccer match.
Yeah.
And then the 66 World Cup final. And he saw that, and interestingly, we're still unclear. We think he was at the match, but he may have just seen it on TV. Sometimes some of this family history stuff is lost.
Yeah.
But he was inspired by that match to start the old North American Soccer League in Dallas Tornado, right?
Yeah.
So the one that he was totally out on was the Chicago Bulls investment.
Yeah.
My mother, Norma, though, was a great high school basketball player. And a gentleman called my dad in 1966 and said, hey, I want you to buy 11.5% of the Chicago Bulls. My dad was absolutely not. I know nothing about basketball. And then he made the mistake of telling my mom about it. And she was the biggest basketball fan of all. And look, I get to talk about this. I know that my father would not have had the success that he had without my mother. My mother was of the strongest character I have ever met. Her resilience, I mean, her family story too. I mean, they had tough times in the 60s. The way my mom got to go to college was on her academics. There were no sports scholarships. She went to North Texas State University. She worked a couple jobs post-college. In fact, that's how she met my dad. She worked at the Dallas Texans ticket office, but she was also a high school teacher in Richardson. But my mother and her perseverance, she was such a unique person. But I just know that the NFL would not be what it is today. We would not have had the investment in the Bulls. All the effort she put into World Championship tennis. I mean, she literally killed herself on these things. And then also the Dallas Tornado and the old NASL, the constant support. But she was so brilliant and so smart, but she had this ability. And I've heard people actually say this about other, people, including Jerry Jones. She had the ability to make you feel like the most special person in the entire world. Jerry's an unbelievable salesman. My mother wasn't selling. That wasn't who she was. But she had this innate ability to make you feel like the most important, special person in the world and the only person. I can't tell you how many people after she passed away last year wrote me, sent me messages, stopped me to tell me this. And I had known it about her. And so I just...
You grew up.
But I grew up with it. But, her way out was academics. And she put in the effort to do that. But on the Chicago Bulls, my dad was, no, we're not doing this. And I can't believe my mother found out. And she said, she begged him to do it. So we bought 11.5% of the Chicago Bulls in 1966 for $67,000.
Wow. And it's like, you can't even get a pickup truck for that now.
You clearly, it's a hybrid. You definitely can't. Right. But she, she was there supporting, and every other owner in the Bulls sold out pre-Jordan. My dad was the only founding owner to keep his interest. And my mom always said, your greatest reward was the greatest player of all time and 6 championships for sticking with it. And again, life lesson of my dad. He stuck with a lot of things till the end, and sometimes it was painful. The North American Soccer League, I mean, he was really last man standing when that went out of business in the early 80s, and that was really same with World Championship tennis as it fizzled out in the 80s. He was last man standing, if you will, and those were tough financially. Well,
I'm glad in a way that he stayed with the Bulls as well, because growing up in Illinois, that made my childhood with the Michael Jordan era. It was a fun time to be a kid.
It causes this weird perspective, though, and I and when you think about it, I was like, oh, we're going to be doing this all the time. We're going to win championships all the time, and this is going to be fun and easy. And that 6 was great, and I'm ready for the next 6. Something interesting that my mom said when we won Super Bowl 54, I think that was one of her greatest moments of her life. So she was so proud of my brother Clark, who does a fantastic job, and what he has done at the Chiefs and the success that we've had, along with Andy Reid and Brett Veach and Mark Donovan, that leadership team there. Again, all of them are special people, very, very unique. And the effort that they put into the success of that organization is so cool. And again, same with my brother and in his special ability. Everybody always asks about him. And I'm like, he is one of the best negotiators I've ever been around. Sometimes you have to actually watch your wallet with him. But his attention to detail and his ability to negotiate has led to a lot of our success. But we win Super Bowl 54, and my mother looks at me, and her health was in decline. And she said, this is just such an amazing moment. She goes, Dan, back when the Texans and Chiefs were winning the AFL championships and we were playing the Super Bowl, we lost 1 to Green Bay. We won 4. She goes, I thought we were going to do this all the time. She said, little did I imagine it would be 50 years before we would win another Super Bowl. And she said, this is just an amazing moment. And you have to enjoy those victories.
Absolutely.
Right? You work hard, and sometimes there doesn't feel like much of a reward. But when you get that yes, make that sale, when you deliver to a client, when you win, you have to enjoy it, because that's what you have to look to in life to get over a lot of those no's.
You got to celebrate those victories.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get into soccer and how that works, but you just said something I want to come back to with the success that the Chiefs have now, and you named off a lot of people that are instrumental in the success that you guys have. How important is finding the right people and putting them in the right position on your team to empower yourself to experience success?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have great leaders in your organization. And, continuity is a big deal. And a lot of people come and go in business, but having people who you trust and believe in and who can deliver as leaders within your organizations, it is critical. I mean, Andy Reid was a no-brainer.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
I mean, that's just that's
Hall of Fame coach available.
Yeah,
bring him in.
Yeah, you have to, and he was that great, and he's a special person. I mean, Andy is just so unique, and the buy-in. Again, everybody's selling, right? Everybody's got to sell, and I'll spend a little bit of time. Andy has to sell the belief that he's going to put every player in the best position to be successful, and then but his work ethic is amazing. I mean, the man sleeps on his couch in the stadium, and one of the greatest coaches of all time, and that's what it takes to be great.
Yeah.
But he's selling, and Brett Veach is selling the vision of the kind of players that we want, and they have full autonomy to do what they want. I mean, you also have to empower your people to be successful, and I think Mark Donovan is as talented a sports executive as there is in this country. And then with my brother and his ability to lead, to manage, and manage, it's not just managing the bottom line, it's being thoughtful in the details. I mean, that's really the four of them, they've really got it going on. But if you've got the right people, you also have to hold on to them. The mistakes of letting go of really talented people it sometimes can be hard to recover. You got to appreciate them for who they are and what they do. There has to be rewards there. But if you can do that and keep the team together, you will have a lot of success, because the effort in having to go and retrain somebody else or acquire new talent, it can set you back for years.
Yeah. And it's more effort than sometimes the effort to keep and retain people.
A lot easier to keep the good ones.
Yeah, for sure. And I think sometimes, leaders, especially new leaders, is just to understand that having people that you're surrounding yourself in leadership roles that support you and your goal, having people that have greater vision or maybe are more talented in other areas, it's empowering as a leader. And sometimes people feel, I don't know if I'm concerned, or if I feel like this person's trying to compete with me. It's put people that are better than you in a lot of ways, and it helps. And as long as you treat them right, take care of them, create this team culture, look what happens.
Yeah, for a lot of people, you hear them say, I want to train my replacement.
Yeah.
And we've had definitely management teams at different businesses that have done a great job of that. Sports is a little bit different, right? Because environment changes, players change, in those things. But it's exactly right. Trust them. Right? They've got to earn the trust, but trust them to do the job and do it right. And if you do that and they feel empowered and there's a plan, for them and their personal success, I promise you will be so much better off than doing it. But if you have constant changeover, I think you're asking for a lot of failures and a lot of trouble doing that.
Yeah, and you can't establish a culture because it's always changing and the leadership's changing, and in some ways people don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, I look at our family businesses, and I think one of the unique things is the longevity. And if you look at the last three trustees of the Chiefs and FC Dallas, I mean, they have almost a combined 150 years with our family, which is an amazing number.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get back into the soccer side of things here, right? We got so many great things to talk about. You talk about timing and making sure things are in the right. That first soccer league didn't work out, and culturally in this country, soccer's there, but it certainly doesn't have the youth movement that it has today and that it's had for the last couple decades. So I think timing maybe had something to do with that. And how do you transition from there in the modern day MLS?
Yeah, well, let's start in the Dallas market.
Okay.
With the Dallas Tornado here, my father starting the team, a lot of these young men were coming from Europe, and staying, and they laid down roots here, married American girls. And with their soccer careers ending or the NASL running out of time, if you will, and the sort of eventual failure of that league, they started youth clubs here and camps and wound up coaching at schools around the Metroplex. And Dallas wasn't unique, but I think it's such a great place to live that it became the epicenter of youth soccer in this country. And so many successful youth clubs are in this market.
There's a ton here.
There is a ton of competition for FC Dallas.
Right, absolutely,
But it's made Dallas produce so many great players over the years. And I think that foundational element really, has made the city unique. And then Dallas Cup, obviously, probably the most renowned youth tournament in the entire world. I had the opportunity to play in it a couple times. Such a fabulous experience. But we had that, but NASL's gone. And it's the prospects of professional soccer weren't great. I mean, obviously the Dallas Sidekicks were going on, and they had those heyday years and Tattoo and the success there.
Right.
But the World Cup gets awarded to the United States in 1994. My father was chairman of the Dallas Bid, but part of that promise was to bring back Division I professional soccer. And so that was the founding of Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
And my dad with a number of owners that they rounded up, a lot of excitement, 10 teams. League was supposed to launch in 95, but didn't.
This is the second time he's created a league. Not just the second time, but similar to that AFL scenario, right? Grab some people and let's start a league.
Yeah, well, and they took some of the blueprints from the NFL, the success and the salary cap system and entity structure and lessons learned. Also lessons learned from the failures.
Right. What to do and what not to do.
Exactly. And you never quite know how it's going to work out, but there were a lot of things on his checklist that helped found Major League Soccer. And the league kicks off in 1996. And we wound up with two franchises, actually, Kansas City and Columbus.
Okay.
There was nobody who was going to take Columbus. And Kansas City made sense because of Arrowhead, but we didn't wind up with Dallas. Dallas was league owned, and the league really struggled mightily. It was a very difficult time. It was hard with crowds. Broadcast was basically non-existent. And so you were all these pillars that you needed: ticket revenue, media rights, sponsorship, and then the one that was the total outlier that it was a dead zero was player transfers, which is a big component of soccer around the world, is the buying and selling of soccer players. I mean, most people forget that in it about 93, players actually traded at NFL franchises for cash. I can't remember the last year. Now, you see this now in baseball to some capacity, and you also see it in the NBA with draft picks. Sometimes they trade for cash consideration and stuff like that. In fact, a few years ago, I'll never forget, the Bulls traded away their second round pick for some cash, and they traded to Golden State. And I was like, no, not to that. They were sort of in their heyday. I was like, please don't, give them, more ammunition to go out and play. But you take all those foundational things that we had, the lessons learned, the no's, lots of no's, and then some of the great moments. Hey, the greatest moment of the old NASL was Pelé. And the energy that brought, and we're seeing it right now in Major League Soccer with Messi.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this league, or this country, if you will, has had probably the two greatest players of all time. I mean, the Argentinian fans are probably going crazy right now saying, what about Maradona? And he was a fabulous soccer player, to not forget about him. But, Messi also leading Argentina to World Cup glory, and he could have gone anywhere in the world, and he picked to come to Major League Soccer. But found the league, and boy, we are stumbling along. And my very first day in the family office, I was, unfortunately in New York for September 11th. In fact, running from the towers as they were coming down.
Wow.
And that was an incredible, life-changing moment. First off, it's so sad. And the loss and the devastation that caused.
And to have experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, and just it was really such a difficult moment. it was a moment of growth for me, but also just understanding how precious life is, and also so proud of our country. I go back to that. My father was incredibly patriotic, and my mother, but our country, rose up stronger. From it.
Absolutely.
It brought us together.
Absolutely did.
And such a out of something so terrible, I'm really proud to be an American. After that, but look, Major League Soccer, we were in big trouble. And November 2001, my very first day on the job in the family office, we were actually in the Chiefs' offices, sitting there, and there's a league call, and things weren't going very well at Major League Soccer. And basically, the call ended with everybody hanging up in the league office, hiring the bankruptcy attorneys, going down. They were going to go down to the federal courthouse on Monday morning and file the bankruptcy papers. And
this is day one. Welcome to the job.
Day one.
Welcome to the family business.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I mean, Clark looks at me, and we're sitting next to each other on the couch. Goes, "Congratulations, you've been hired and fired on the same day." It's a very, it's a very exclusive club. Yeah. So it's a club you don't want to be a part of.
Yeah.
So
right.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, definitely.
But my dad, the never say die, right? In the face of adversity and mounting losses. And he believed there was a plan and a path forward. Again, going all the way back to the old AFL, that league was going to fold after year one. And he was able to convince the owners to stick around and then stick around again. And then all of a sudden they got a TV contract and started to get the momentum. And then the NFL had to take notice. So my dad had learned those lessons. He'd seen the joy and success of, football and the failures of soccer and tennis, and he knew how hard it would be to restart again. And so he got Robert Kraft and Phil Anschutz to agree. The three of them took 10 teams.
Wow.
And on January 1st, 2002, MLS handed us the keys to Dallas. And it was, what a moment, right? And, we were playing in the Cotton Bowl. This was the Dallas Burn, and there was a lot of difficulties in an old stadium. And, in the next, 18 months or so, MLS sells an expansion franchise in Salt Lake. And I think the number is either $3.8 or $3.9 million. And everybody was high-fiving each other around the table. And I mean, that's
a big victory, though, at this time.
It was a big victory. And I'll never forget Tim Lewicki, who was head of AEG at the time. So for Mr. Anschutz, said, "Guys, one day we're going to sell one of these franchises for $15 million." And the cheer in the room went crazy. I mean, San Diego just sold for $500 million.
It's amazing.
Right? I mean, we've come so far, but we were at the brink.
Yeah.
But life lessons, the things that were learned, the no's, but then also the yeses in life and the reward. And, people always ask me, I mean, my dad had so many great sayings and was so thoughtful, but his ability to produce work and meaningful work was like nothing you've ever seen before. I would come into our family boardroom at our downtown offices, and it sat 26 people in that family boardroom. And there would be a memo at every seat in the boardroom, and he would have handwritten the first memo. It was typed by his assistants. They would stand on either side of him, and then he would go around and edit every single memo at every chair, and he would make laps. It's like he was running a track meet, except it was more of a memo meet. Yeah. And it was everything. It was everything from thanking a fan for their support, sending them an autographed football card.
Yeah.
I mean, when my father was inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1972, he accepted it on behalf of the football fans of America. He understood the fans are what makes sports great. And that's appreciating who your customer base is. And he would shake hands. He would know stories. He'd know things about people's families, these families. The way he engaged with them, they were our customers.
Yeah.
And it's a life lesson in all businesses, right? You got to know your customer. You got to know the details about them. And if you do that, that little bit of extra goes a long ways. But I would watch my dad. He'd make laps. And I mean, it was everything from, memos to the NFL commissioner to, memos to Major League Soccer to documents they were writing to business ideas to ticket campaigns. I mean, my father was fanatical about ticket campaigns. I mean, he understood there will be dark times, where you won't play well. Again, That's a failure.
But you need the tickets.
But you need the
Yeah.
tickets, but you also need to make sure your fans believe in what you're doing and you have a plan to go forward. And so that was something that's actually something I wish I had from my father. I work hard, not like him.
Yeah.
But his ability to produce meaningful memos that are strategically great. That's one thing I really need to improve.
Yeah.
on.
He crafted that. Well, and when you talk about just the when he accepts his induction into the NFL Hall of Fame on behalf of the fans, and as you said, understanding who your customers are and making sure that you're putting them first and foremost and appreciating them. I think there's some humility in that as well, understanding that a lot of the success that people have is a result of the people that are around them influencing that, not just them, but it's kind of the efforts of all and your customers as well is what makes you successful.
Yeah, the day you believe it's just you is the start of your failure.
Absolutely.
Because so many people work hard and are invested in your success. And it's your coworkers, it's your family, it's your customers.
Yeah.
There is investment from everyone. You do not do this on your own.
Yeah.
And when you believe that it's only about you, one, you're on a path that will eventually be destructive.
Right.
But two, I think you need to look at yourself in the mirror and reevaluate who you are and how you're going about things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. So now as MLS is just taking off, you talk about Messi and, Messi mania, right? I mean, I remember seeing that here in Dallas just while he's coming and they're just, I'm sure the ticket sales are through the roof and, waiting lists and, the TV contract, I think with Apple, right? And how many people are now getting that kind of funneled into their living room and experiencing soccer. Like you said, it's the world sport. What do you see happening in this country as soccer progresses? Do you see it starting to overtake and becoming a dominating program at the same world level that it is in Europe and some other places?
Yeah, my dad, before he passed away, he said, guys, one day Major League Soccer will rival the NFL. And if you think about Major League Soccer, we're in the 30-year category. A lot of these top clubs are all over 100 years of history.
Yeah.
And they don't have the kind of competition that we have in this sports market. I mean, you have the NFL, you have the NBA, NHL. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Baseball.
But and I mean, auto racing is taking, you see what Formula One is targeted the United States market, and those events are really exciting. But we're on an unbelievable path. And you mentioned Apple and the way they think about it. We couldn't have picked a better broadcast partner. The technological spin on this and the effort that they put into it and the focus from the Apple leadership, it's really been amazing.
And it's connecting into that demographic that is really engaged in soccer as well.
Yeah, we have the young demographic in soccer, and it's so valuable to sponsors. They're exciting how they consume the sport, and we're starting to see the fruits of the ticket revenue I talked about, the sponsorship revenue that we spent time, media rights. We're starting to see the fruits of that, but also the transfer market. The MLS has grown with enough respect, and the U.S. national team having success has raised the domestic value of players so that you can buy and sell the players, because that still exists in the game of soccer, and it's a major bucket of how you run your business. It is an amazing time to be involved. I don't know how many more expansion teams will add, right? Eventually you get a little too big.
You don't want to be watered down.
You don't want to be watered down, and there's a right amount of matches to be played, and then we have Leagues Cup, and then the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, a tournament named after my father, and so you have a lot of competitions. Not to mention your very best players are playing for their national teams.
Sure,
and so a top player in MLS will play maybe 60 matches a year.
Wow.
And that's a lot of soccer.
Yeah.
It really is a lot of travel.
Yeah.
A big issue we face in Major League Soccer is we have the second most domestic travel of any major league. Brazil being the largest, because they have all sorts of cups and tournaments and states, and it's such a gigantic country.
Yeah.
But that's definitely an issue that we have faced, and we continue thinking about reinventing ourselves. That's the one thing I would hope for soccer is to be more aggressive in rule changes. NFL's been great at it. NBA has been great at it. NHL has been really great. And then look at baseball, with the pitch clock and everything that's gone on there. They have transformed their business.
And that timing was great in baseball as the attention span starts to go down for viewership and for the new audience, that they were able to keep it relevant.
Yeah, that's one of the greatest, most thoughtful moves in sports from a league. And I think they're seeing a lot of success from it and a lot of interest from it. And I know Globe Life is very involved here locally and picking the winning horse, too.
Right, absolutely.
The Texas Rangers.
Let's keep that going.
Yeah, exactly. Really a fun and special season. They captured the magic.
They did.
And that's also about timing again. You get hot in a certain amount of time, and sometimes it can be short, sometimes it can be long, and that was really a fun run and great involvement. But I think the sky is the limit for soccer, and we got World Cup 2026 coming.
It's going to be huge.
Right now, Copa America's here, which is great, and then you've got the Euros going on, and so a lot of soccer is happening, a lot of content on top of Major League Soccer, but. Everybody always asks, and 94 World Cup was the most financially successful World Cup of all time. 2026 will blow everything out of the water. One, because it's 48 teams, largest field ever, 104 matches. And I'm so proud to be the chairman of the World Cup for Dallas and get 9 games here. That was really a proud moment for me. And my brother is chairman of the Kansas City bid, and they got 6. My dad said one of his biggest failings was not getting World Cup games for Kansas City in 1994. His favorite place on earth was Arrowhead Stadium.
Yeah.
And so that really hurt. I knew that. So I'm so proud that my brother was able to do that, and proud that I was able to do it with a fabulous team here, working with the Cowboys, Dallas Sports Commission, a lot of our sponsors, partners involved, our fans. And so to be able to, have 9 games right here in the Metroplex it is a great thing. But you have that. And then I believe you'll see the Women's World Cup in the United States in 2031. I think U.S. Soccer will get aggressive, and it will, again, I think it'll just energize the domestic league in such a way. My biggest hope, though, out of World Cup 2026 is this. We wind up getting more young people who say, instead of playing in the NFL or NBA or baseball, I want to represent my national team and play in a World Cup. I want to be a professional soccer player. And my pathway through doing that is through the local club. Yeah. And I hope that it leads us. I called it the Michael Jordan moment. Creating the best player in the world, and I'll call it a Messi moment for us. I hope it leads to one of these athletes becoming the greatest player in the world.
I think it can. And you talk about the timing and just, again, understand the context of all the challenges that were presented that had to be overcome to even get to this point. But now you've got a youth movement where, you do something as simple as partnering with Apple and providing soccer in a media that meets the target audience where they consume it, right? Kind of meeting where they're at. You've got the youth movement coming through Dallas and in a lot of other major cities, and then the World Cup. And it's kind of all these things are going to happen just at the right moment. But the story weave through the past and having to overcome this here and overcome that there leads it to. It's just kind of an amazing thing when you take a step back and look at it.
Nothing's ever easy.
Yeah,
it's not. And there's been, a lot of tough moments, but the great moments too are well worth it. And again, it's like life and work. I mean, no job is, it's not smooth sailing always. And it's, again, those tough moments lead to great moments. Yeah. And when you have a great moment, you have to enjoy it and celebrate that great moment, your success, because there has to be a reward, too, for having it. And I think the reward was getting the 2026 World Cup, getting so many games domestically, getting them here in the Metroplex. And I just think it's such a bright future. And then the interest in owning an MLS franchise. I mean, the line is out the door around the corner. We have more people who want to buy a team than we'll ever sell. Yeah. And that's just such a great place, because before it was please, or in the case of Dallas, here are the keys. Yeah. And you guys figure it out. And I think we've done a great job with it. I'm so proud of the organization. I'm proud of the people I get to work with. Yeah. I do have the greatest job in the entire world.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing story. And thank you so much for coming in and sharing it with us. I know that so many people will be able to take these moments and just apply them to where they are and help as they go through their journey as well. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're not done yet. As you know, we talked about this before. All the guests here on the Level Up Lifestyle podcast received their very own bobblehead. And so they've been kind of watching over us as we've had conversations today. So I'm very excited to present you your Dan Hunt Level Up Lifestyle bobblehead, and here you are.
Oh, wow, it has better hair than I do, so I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, well, we want it to be a good representation, and I joked around with somebody on the show before, and I said, well, it also depends on when that headshot was taken that we used. So
I enjoyed the older headshot. I'm not gonna lie, the one back 10 years ago is a good look for me.
Yeah.
But thank you for this.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. And so, like I say, all the guests, there's lots of twists and turns in your journey, and kind of those dark moments where do we go and what do we do? If the bobblehead represents what you've learned to put you to where you are today, if you could reflect back in those challenging moments, what would you tell yourself back then based on who you are today?
It's worth it. It is worth it. The opportunities that exist and the things that you can achieve through hard work and doing things the right way and treating people in the right manner. Something I'm so proud of. During COVID, we didn't lay off anybody at FC Dallas. There were a lot of different strategies we had to go through, but we wanted to take care of people. I thought we did a great job at my family office at the Chiefs. There are going to be hard times, but enjoy the successes. There are incredible rewards that will stay with you for the rest of your life. And make sure that you continue to try to push your family's legacy forward and be focused on that. But more importantly, be the best human being that you can be. And I think if you do that, the rewards are just so great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these are all great lessons in what happens when you run a business the right way. How that success kind of finds you without you having to go look for it. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode has inspired you on your path to success. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. See you soon on the Level Up Lifestyle podcast.